Hollywood just lost one of its brightest lights, and the news came like a punch to the heart. Diane Keaton, the woman who redefined charm, intelligence, and individuality on screen, is gone. At 79, the Oscar-winning legend passed away after what her family describes as a sudden and heartbreaking battle with pneumonia. Her death stunned not just her loved ones, but an entire generation that grew up watching her the quick wit in Annie Hall, the strength in the First Wives Club, the quiet power in The Godfather. For decades, Diane wasn't just an actress, she was an era. But what makes this moment even more emotional is how unexpected it was. Friends say her health declined very suddenly. One day she was her usual spirited self, and then everything changed. Now her family is speaking out for the first time, sharing both their grief and their gratitude in an exclusive statement. And while fans mourn around the world, a deeper story is emerging, one of privacy, compassion, and the legacy of a woman who never followed the rules, even to the very end. The news of Diane Keaton's passing spread across Hollywood like wildfire, and no one could believe it was real. Reports from People confirmed the heartbreaking truth. Diane had passed away in California at 79, after her health declined very suddenly. Those close to her described the moment as shattering. For decades, Diane was the picture of vitality, always full of energy, laughter, and that signature quirky charm that made her one of a kind. That's why this loss hit so hard. A family insider told People her decline came out of nowhere, saying, "It was so unexpected, especially for someone with such strength and spirit." Hollywood stars, co-stars, and fans immediately took to social media, sharing memories and tributes. Many said the same thing, that Diane wasn't just talented, she was alive in every sense of the word. Her smile, her laugh, her unapologetic personality, it all felt timeless. But behind the scenes, her closest family members had been quietly preparing for the worst. And when the news finally broke, they chose to speak not through a publicist or press conference, but through a deeply personal statement. In that message, the Keaton family didn't focus on fame or legacy. Instead, they thanked fans for their extraordinary messages of love and support. Their words painted a portrait of a woman who was loved far beyond the screen, someone who cared more about kindness than red carpets. But as touching as that statement was, it also revealed something most fans didn't know. Something about Diane's final wishes and the causes that defined her in the years before her passing. When Diane Keaton's family finally broke their silence, their words weren't about fame, fortune, or Hollywood history. They were about heart. In a statement shared exclusively with People, the Keaton family said they were very grateful for the extraordinary messages of love and support from around the world. But what stood out most was how they described her not as a movie star, but as someone who lived with compassion and conviction. They revealed something that perfectly captured who Diane truly was: her love for animals and her dedication to helping the unhoused. Instead of flowers or memorials, the family asked that anyone wishing to honor her make donations to local food banks or animal shelters, two causes she quietly supported for years. That small detail spoke volumes. It showed that, even after her passing, Diane's focus remained on kindness, generosity, and helping those who couldn't help themselves. Those who knew her personally say this wasn't surprising. Diane had always been deeply empathetic, the kind of person who would stop to talk to someone struggling on the street, or adopt a pet no one else wanted. Away from the cameras, she was gentle, funny, and a little eccentric, just as she appeared on screen, but even more real. Her family's message wasn't just a goodbye. It was a reminder of who she truly was, not just an actress, but a soul who believed in love, humanity, and simple good deeds. But behind that warmth was another layer, something far more private. Because while the world adored her, Diane's final months were hidden from almost everyone. And what happened during that time reveals just how fiercely she guarded her personal life. In the glittering world of Hollywood, where every secret eventually finds its way to the headlines, Diane Keaton somehow managed to keep her final months completely private. According to those close to her, she spent her last days surrounded only by her immediate family. No cameras, no reporters, not even her closest friends knew how serious things had become. A source told people that even longtime friends weren't fully aware of what was happening. It was all kept within a small circle of trust, and that choice wasn't out of fear or pride, it was out of love. Diane had always believed that some parts of life, especially pain, should stay sacred. She didn't want the world to see her as fragile. She wanted to be remembered for her laughter, her bold spirit, and that unmistakable sparkle that made every character she played feel alive. Throughout her career, Diane was known for balancing fame with mystery. She rarely discussed her private life, avoided drama, and never allowed tabloids to define her. So it makes perfect sense that even in her final chapter, she stayed true to that same quiet dignity. Those final months, spent in silence and love, weren't about saying goodbye to the world. They were about saying goodbye her way. No public spectacle, no grand farewell, just peace, family, and reflection. And yet, while the world didn't know what she was going through, her absence from public life in recent months had quietly sparked concern among fans. Few realized that behind that silence was a woman gracefully preparing for her final bow, the same way she had lived, privately, purposefully, and on her own terms. But before her passing, Diane left behind something extraordinary, a career and legacy that reshaped Hollywood itself. And the story of how she built it is nothing short of legendary. Diane Keaton's career wasn't just successful, it was revolutionary. She wasn't the kind of actress who fit into Hollywood's mold. She broke it. From the moment she appeared on screen, Diane brought something completely new, a mix of humor, vulnerability, and confidence that made every role unforgettable. Her breakthrough came in the early 1970s with The Godfather, where she played Kay Adams, the woman caught between love and power in one of cinema's greatest stories. That role catapulted her into stardom, but it was Annie Hall that changed everything. Her quirky style, offbeat charm, and razor-sharp delivery not only won her an Oscar for Best Actress, they redefined what a leading lady could be. Diane didn't play a character. She was the character, natural, real, and unapologetically herself. After Annie Hall, she became a Hollywood icon, starring in a wave of classics like The First Wives Club, Something's Gotta Give, and The Family Stone. Each film revealed a different side of her, from heartbreak to humor, from quiet strength to chaotic joy. Directors like Woody Allen and Nancy Meyers built entire worlds around her unique presence. But Diane wasn't just a performer, she was a creator. She stepped behind the camera, too, directing films like Heaven and Hanging Up, and even an episode of Twin Peaks. Her artistic eye went beyond acting. She saw the world differently, and her work reflected that honest, messy human. Even in her later years, Diane continued to charm audiences with roles in Book Club. Finding Dory and Palms, she never stopped evolving, proving that talent has no age limit. Every role carried that same unmistakable spark, the Diane Keaton essence, fearless, funny, and fiercely independent. But the story of Diane Keaton isn't just about fame or film. It's about the woman behind the camera, the one who chose motherhood, solitude, and authenticity over Hollywood expectations. Behind the Hollywood spotlight, Diane Keaton was nothing like the typical movie star, and that's exactly what made her unforgettable. Born Diane Hall in Los Angeles in 1946, she grew up dreaming of the stage long before she ever stepped onto a film set. But fame never changed her core. She stayed grounded, eccentric, and completely true to herself, the same woman who wore oversized hats to award shows and laughed louder than anyone else in the room. In an industry obsessed with image and perfection, Diane stood out by embracing her quirks. She was honest about her insecurities, her fears, and her flaws, and fans loved her for it. She once said she never wanted to fit into Hollywood's idea of the perfect woman. Instead, she built her own version of happiness. One of her most powerful decisions was choosing motherhood on her own terms. She adopted her daughter Dexter in 1996 and her son Duke in 2001, years after achieving everything she could have professionally. Diane raised them as a single mother, something she described as the most meaningful role of her life. She often said that her children gave her a sense of love and purpose that no film ever could, and though she never married, she was never alone. In her 2019 People interview, Diane reflected on her life, saying, "I'm really glad I didn't get married. I'm an oddball." That line, part humor, part truth, summed her up perfectly. She wasn't afraid to live differently. She didn't chase approval or convention. She built a life that made sense to her. Her independence inspired generations of women to believe that fulfillment doesn't always come from following tradition. Diane proved you can have a beautiful, meaningful life, one defined by love, laughter, and freedom without ever saying, "I do." And even as the cameras stopped rolling, Diane continued to make an impact through her kindness, her activism, and her deep empathy for others. Because for Diane Keaton, life was never just about art, it was about heart. Diane Keaton's legacy isn't just written in film history, it's written in the lives she touched, the people she helped, and the kindness she carried quietly behind the fame. While the world knew her as an Oscar-winning actress, those closest to her knew her as someone who never turned away from those in need. She had a deep love for animals, often rescuing and adopting pets others had given up on. Her home was said to be filled with laughter, creativity, and furry friends, a space that reflected who she truly was: warm, compassionate, and fiercely protective of the voiceless. Beyond that, Diane spent years quietly supporting organizations that helped the unhoused community, never seeking recognition for it. She once said she believed in helping in ways that don't need applause, and she lived exactly that way. Even her sense of style, those iconic turtlenecks, bowler hats, and wide-brimmed fedoras became a form of self-expression that inspired generations. She didn't dress to impress others. She dressed to feel like herself. That authenticity became her signature. In a world obsessed with trends, Diane was timeless. Colleagues often described her as someone who could make a room light up just by walking in, not because she demanded attention, but because her energy was contagious. She had that rare ability to make people feel seen, whether it was a co-star, a friend, or a total stranger, and that's what made her so beloved. She didn't just play strong, unforgettable women on screen, she was one. Every performance, every interview, every moment felt real because it came from a place of truth. Now, as Hollywood reflects on her passing, what stands out isn't the awards or the box office numbers, it's the soul behind the smile. Diane Keaton's life reminds us that greatness isn't about being the loudest or the most visible. It's about being genuine, about living with heart, humor, and humility. And though she's no longer with us, her light continues to shine through her films, her family, and the countless lives she quietly touched. But perhaps the most beautiful part of Diane's story is that she never needed to say goodbye. Because people like her, they never really leave. Diane Keaton's passing marks the end of an era, but her spirit feels impossible to erase. Few stars have ever balanced brilliance and authenticity the way she did. She was bold without arrogance, funny without trying, emotional without artifice. In a world that constantly asked women to change, Diane stood still, firm in who she was, and unshakably herself. Her legacy isn't just found in her films, though those will live forever. It's in the quiet lessons she left behind: to love deeply, to live honestly, and to never apologize for being different. She showed that success doesn't mean perfection, it means truth. And Diane's truth was always wrapped in warmth, it and a touch of rebellion. Even now, fans around the world are revisiting her movies, laughing, crying, and realizing how much of herself she poured into every role. She didn't just act, she made people feel. And that's something time can never take away. As her family said, the best way to honor her is through compassion, a donation to a food bank, a helping hand to someone in need, or love for an animal that has none. Because that's how Diane lived, giving, nurturing, and believing in goodness when the world didn't always deserve it. She may have left this world quietly, but her influence will echo loudly for generations. Her laughter, her courage, her signature style, they'll forever be part of Hollywood's heartbeat. Diane Keaton didn't just make movies. She made memories. And those, just like her, will never fade.